I think I think this might be the most Spider-Man movie I have seen since Spider-Man 2, if that makes sense. So, the first half of this is going to be a non-spoiler review, and the second half is going to be a spoiler review. The non-spoiler review hopefully should be around like something around 5 minutes. This non-spoiler version, the part of that. The spoiler part, I don't know how long that's gonna be. Okay, so you guys can tell. I'm gonna try and keep it short and sweet, but there's a lot that happens in this movie. Okay. Um. So non-spoiler first. I'm not gonna give this a rating. I'm just gonna because I have in my own head, and I haven't put in the channel out there of like rankings of where I put the MCU movies. Infinity War is number one, and I have Endgame somewhere in the top three, and like Captain America: Civil War somewhere there. Um, at least in the top five. Those three are in the top five, so it gives you a rough estimate. I saw Shang-Chi like 2 months ago. I saw Shang-Chi, and well, a little more than that because the movie came out in like September. But that movie was in the top seven for me. I don't know if it was seventh exactly. I don't really give it exact numbers and rankings. So if you're looking for like a rank, basically this is me telling you you're not gonna get a full on like I'll tell you whether or not the movie was good, which spoiler alert, it was very, very good. But I'll give you in the non-spoiler ways why I liked this so much without going into the plot or anything that would allude to the plot. First off, for me, I feel like this movie would explain, like, it explains, to me at least, my bad, hold on. Okay, it explains to me the whole trilogy of Homecoming. You know what I mean? Because we've had the home reference a lot throughout this whole thing, and it made sense. Like Homecoming, he starts high school, Far From Home, he's abroad, but it was kind of a weird choice. Like, why home as the theme? Now it's like No Way Home. I kind of think, after seeing this movie, and without going into the plot, I kind of think this movie explains why home is a theme. So when you go into watching this, like I said, it's a great movie. I feel like if you use the thought process, I'm not saying throughout the entire film, home is, but when you come out of the film, you'll kind of understand what I mean. When I say, to me, I think home resonates in this movie. I'm already taking 3 minutes to explain this, and I'm taking forever. But another thing is, this movie, if you can tell from the trailers, is a very it's a very good like there's a lot of villains. There's a lot of villains. And this I think is such a cool like I said this in the trailer reaction. It's such a cool way of putting these villains in this movie, like putting them in the MCU. Um and to me, I think it's interesting because every single one of them is a better villain than I think we've ever gotten in the MCU. Some of them were like surprisingly charismatic. You know what I mean? Like I don't remember. I don't know if it's because I haven't seen the movies in a long time. But some of them I was like, I swear you didn't have this much personality in your own film. And I think that has to do with the fact it's the MCU. It's a different director, different writer, and everything. They're used to giving these characters more life. No offense to the Sony, whoever made those movies, right? I think they kind of played off like one note sometimes, opposed to like Otto Octavius and Green Goblin, right? Willem Dafoe, by the way, without going into like the plot at all, Willem Dafoe, like I don't okay. The movie Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man movie, came out the year I was born. Okay, so I've only seen clips of the film. I haven't seen the full film in its entirety, but I do remember like as Green Goblin, you don't get like Willem Dafoe like too much of like You do get it, but you don't get him like Green Goblin without his mask. You know what I mean? You do, but you don't. This movie, because the thing is, right? It's because of the time, the period of the film. It makes sense you don't get like what you get in the comics, where it feels like Goblin, especially if you've seen like what is it called? There's like different like in present time, I say present time. It's like I think in like 2013 is when the art came out. But like in recent comics, whenever Green Goblin shows up, he is psychotic. He's psychotic. Whether he is just Norman or whether he's like with the costume, he looks very Joker-esque in terms of like mannerism. Not like mannerism isn't like theatrical, overly, but like psychotic. You know what I mean? Um, and I'm nervous because I feel like I'm going too deep into it. But regardless, you get a lot from Willem Dafoe, man. You get so much, and from a lot of the other actors too that played the roles. Um, yeah, I'll talk about some things in the spoiler review. This is just meant to give you guys a heads up. Even though you don't see him in the you see him in the trailer in costume, I'll tell you what, Willem Dafoe, he there are scenes where I was like, this guy is I need to like I don't know. Anyways, it was insane. It was incredible. He is amazing at like I imagine you went into this going like I have the opportunity to do this character again and I'm going to do this character like they are giving me more freedom of like listen, you do what you can do, show off what you can. But man, the villains in this were so interesting. They were so interesting. And it surprised me how much I was invested into them. You know what I mean? Like I knew all of them, but I was like, wow, this really shows like the MCU is like completely different. You know what I mean? Like it's not like just the characters like, oh, these are good characters. Like no, you have good characters, but if you have like not a plan, it doesn't work. I'll also say this last thing, maybe last thing, unless I can think of something else. Um, this movie, I would say, is easily the best movie out of the trilogy. Like, it blows everything out of the water. And to top that off, because we're basically getting to around where it's getting too long for the non-spoiler part, this movie is in my top three. So it's with Infinity War, it's with probably Endgame, it way better than Civil War to me. And Civil War, I love that film. Winter Soldier's good, but it was never. But I feel like dynamics. I like having two. I like having more characters, especially in the MCU. It's more organized. They know how to do it with a lot of characters. But my God, this movie was incredible. I will say this before I end this off. Um, I'm an honest guy, all right? I'll take it, I'll take it with pride. This movie made me very, very emotional, like very emotional, more emotional than I was expecting. Okay, I may have cried. I won't say why, but I may have cried in some parts. All right, yes, more than once. Um, but I think that has everything to do with just literally they it almost it's incredible to me how they made this seem like it was all part of the plan. You know what I mean? Like from the first movie, like to now, it's insane. Anyways, I'd say this movie is in the top three for me of MCU movies, period. If it's not in your top three, I don't know. Maybe it's just like my first screening and my first digest of the film. I loved Far From Home, but after watching it a few more times, I was like, you know what, the beginning is a little slow. It is a little slow, but I never said Far From Home to me when after I came out of the theaters, like, wow, this is top five. I was like, I don't know, but it's much better than the Homecoming. Homecoming was good, but I was like, I need Spider-Man to feel like Spider-Man. That's the last thing actually. This movie is like the end off of Spider-Man's homecoming into the MCU. Like this is because my issue with Homecoming was it was such a Spider-Man Tony Stark movie, and then immediately Far From Home because of what happens with Tony, it ends up becoming still more of a still you have Tony Stark there, but Spider-Man was becoming Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Like Tom Holland's Spider-Man was becoming like, oh, he's turning into Spider-Man. I was like, this is good. We're getting And sort of spoilers for that movie. John Jonah is there, and the MJ thing progresses and everything. It feels more like, okay, this is like Spider-Man. This movie is a Spider-Man movie. Like, it is a Spider-Man. That's why I said this is the most Spider-Man movie I have seen since Spider-Man 2, because it is so, like, so Spider-Man. So Spider-Man. And I loved every minute of that film, because every single thing from the just everything. I would have to go into spoiler territory to talk about like details, but it is, and by the end of it, Spider-Man is no longer like Tom Holland's Spider-Man, like, oh, he's younger, he's get fix figuring it out. No, he is Spider-Man stripped right out of the comics. However you want to perceive that without me, literally, I think that's fair. I'm not giving you insight on the plot or anything. I will say this: when you come out of this film, the Spider-Man you end off with is like, literally take a panel from like an 80s Spider-Man issue, you rip it right out of the panel, put it onto the silver screen. That is Spider-Man. That is Spider-Man. I don't know whether or not I should say it, but like, yeah, basically by the end of it, that's Spider-Man. Like, Spider-Man, Tom Holland Spider-Man is Spider-Man. Like, he is Spider-Man. All right, it's not actually that, like, don't look into that too much. I'm just trying to like find a way to like whether or not I should talk about like things. I'm just gonna leave it be. Point is, it is an amazing like movie in general. Like, I think it's my favorite superhero movie since Endgame, which I know wasn't too long ago, but I'll tell you what, since then was Infinity War, and after Infinity War, it'd been like The Dark Knight. You know what I mean? So like, there's not a lot of contention, but my God, this movie was incredible. I would highly recommend to watch it. If you haven't, go watch it, right? But I would love to know your guys' thoughts. There we go. I would love to know your guys' thoughts on the film. Um, Keep it spoiler free in the comments. But if you came here for the spoiler free review, you know, if you're looking down in the comment section, do it at your own caution, at your own risk. You might not want to, but I'm not gonna say it's spoiler free like territory down there. I'm just gonna say let's push for that. But I do want to know what everyone's like ratings of the film was, what their thoughts were on like how where you rank it with the other films. Not like, oh, this part was incredible and then name the part, right? Like, I would love to talk about it, but I want to keep this review, and plus I like comment sections having a little bit of discussion, even though I know that's tough when you can't talk about what happened in the movie, but I think when we're all saying like where we would put the movie, it's good enough. Anyway, so that is my spoiler-free review. 13 minutes, not too bad. Like I said, I knew it was gonna be a little long, but yeah, so that's gonna be the spoiler-free part of this video. I'm gonna jump into the spoiler part of the video. I have timestamps, well, I have little chapters, so you'll know it's coming to an end. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the review, and I hope you enjoyed the movie. Take care. I'll see you for the spoiler part after you see the film. Okay, now that you've everyone here hopefully has seen the film, or you just don't care. My God, dude. At the end of this movie, I think I should start chronologically. Okay, let's start chronologically. So we're going to be here for about half an hour, but the first thing, right? I was really worried when I saw the trailers. I didn't see any reactions, but I was a little concerned because I was thinking to myself, what if they make this movie just like two Doctor Strange? You know what I mean? Like, it's okay, we had Iron Man, we moved on from Iron Man, now we just have Spider-Man with Doctor Strange. You know what I mean? Like, I wanted Spider-Man to just be Spider-Man. I wanted it to be a Spider-Man movie. I was getting very concerned because in the trailer, every single scene, Strange was there. And I was like, this is fun. Like, oh, it's cool. The scenes are crazy. And Marvel did that thing again where they like put false scenes in the trailer. Like when he's doing the train thing, they're actually fighting each other, but they make it in a way where it's like, oh, they're on a canyon or something, but it's like they're in the mirror world, which would have been like, oh, people would ask questions, like how Hulk was in Infinity War in the trailer, but he wasn't actually in the final fight there and all that stuff. But yeah, I noticed that scene, which is pretty funny. But yeah, at the beginning of this, I was really happy because I realized as the pace picked up, I was like, oh, once Strange got the fight was happening, I was like, well, also, I was so surprised. Peter actually beat Strange. Like it wasn't like Strange was going for lethal blows and he wasn't taking him like a villain like that seriously, but he was taking him seriously. I was amazed because he was like, I beat Doctor Strange. My reaction was, you beat Doctor Strange. How did you do it? It also didn't feel like ridiculous either. Like, oh man. I also love the fact that his original plan, Peter's original plan was go back in time. And I had forgotten, but I actually just realized as Strange was saying it, the time stone he doesn't have anymore. So it made sense in my head. I was like, maybe this balances him out a little bit. And then the fight happens, and I was thinking like, okay, you know what? Actually, it makes sense a little bit. I will say they kind of used just some like portal magic and stuff like that, but it worked. Anyways, once that was done, I was like, okay, so we're gonna have Peter for the whole film. Interesting. And then you had the villains. I was so nervous when they got all of them except for like Green Goblin. Also, we only had one Green Goblin in this movie, and I was so happy we did. I was so happy we did because I was nervous out of my mind when I was thinking like, well, what if we get the hairy versions? You know what I mean? There's two. That's the confusing thing, right? And that first one basically isn't even a character, for being honest. But I mean, it would have been. I'm just happy we had one Green Goblin. Okay, let's talk about Willem Dafoe and let's talk about Green Goblin. I was nervous out of my mind when it was interesting how they did like the Spider-Man twist of like he throws his costume away. He's like, I'm not gonna be this guy anymore. I love that they did the talking thing, like it seems like, oh, it's like a cheesy thing from the old movies. They won't do it in this one. They did it again. He's talking to the mask, he's talking to himself. I was like, okay, here we go. Here we go, because he's the only one they don't have. And I love Doc Ock's reaction. Also, quick mention, I do really like the nanotech thing. I like how in the trailer we thought it was an upgrade, but really it was like, oh yeah, Stark's nanotech. Which I'll talk about Stark, even though Iron Man was never actually even mentioned. Well, no. Was he mentioned? Was Iron Man No, he was referenced. By the way, there's two post-credit scenes in this. Probably should have mentioned that in a non-spoiler review, but I mean, people now should just stay after credits. Anyways, but Stark was referenced in the Eddie like post credit, but he wasn't actually mentioned like Iron Man. So I like that, but I also found it really interesting how the nanotech, yeah, like it took him over and everything. And Doc Ock was surprisingly easy to combat, but it makes sense because Peter has Tony Stark's technology. This is something that no other Spider-Man has, or at least the ones we see in this movie. Which I don't know why I'm like, oh, we'll talk about that later. It's like it's a spoiler review. You guys know, but I want to still talk about the villains and Green Goblin. In my head, I was thinking, okay, well, Green Goblin's gonna be the reason all of this is like they have everyone except for him, and I was like, well, he's the worst one. And I love the way Doc Ock was explaining it because Octavius was talking about him, and he was like, he's a brilliant man. And I was like, I don't remember him going on about him like that. And I love the way they were recording each other. Like how one villain was talking about the other villain. And they made the villain so good in this movie. I had seen so much character, so much discussion, so much life in these actors and characters that I never saw in their movies. Not never, but there was moments. Don't get me wrong. Doc Ock was amazing. His performance. Willem Dafoe, while you didn't get as much of an emotional connection, you got like the presence of a villain. I still argue that this movie did something amazing because I was hearing literally like Lizard and Electro talking about each other. I was like, this is nuts. This is so sick. Also, Lizard was funny. Lizard, I feel like, was kind of used as a little bit of like, we have him on the side. He's the sixth member of the Sinister Six. I love that Doc Ock shifted sooner. I think it makes sense due to his character and how you can upgrade. And I like the way that like it makes sense. Obviously, against this Spider-Man, our MCU Spider-Man, he's gonna lose, right? Stark Tech is just ridiculous, which makes me so interested. Of like, they don't know about Tony Stark, or the Avengers, which was actually name dropped. It was interesting. I love the way they tie that in, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Point is, Willem Dafoe, when he was right there sitting with Aunt May, I was scared to no end because I was thinking to myself, this could go so many ways. I also noticed the colors. I noticed the purple hood and the. I was like, okay, okay, we're going there. We're going there. And I love the way how like she was like, oh, he's sick. You need help. He, in a way, it was because of Goblin or it's because of Norman that Peter and Aunt May, well, Aunt May was able to figure out that Peter, these are people. Like these people need help. They need help. They're not just bad guys. They need help. Right? This isn't like the Vulture guy. This isn't like the Mysterio guy. Right? They're not guys who are out it for revenge, just for the sake of revenge. Oh, he's a rich like prick. Ah, Stark. I hate Stark. It's like no, no, no. These guys need help. They are in so much like their lives are ruined. Like they need help. You need to save them. They're your responsibility is not what she said, but eventually Peter finds out it is his responsibility, which I love so much because that's why him and Strange fight. And when he wins, Doc Ock's like, you could have killed us. Why wouldn't you? And it's not Peter that says it because he does it out of his own actions and nature. It's MJ who knows him the same way Aunt May does, who says that's because that's the kind of guy he is. Because that's what he does, you know? And I found that so sweet because I was like, that helps their relationship. It makes it more natural. It makes, even though it technically is a week-long relationship, which was interesting. I'm not gonna go too much about MJ and Peter's relationship, because I mean, it's there and it was done well, but I still feel like it's a week-long relationship, and I didn't forget that because the movie starts with literally right from where we picked off. So I was like, eh. Anyways, so then we get the most like left field thing. I wasn't expecting this. All the villains are freed and they go to Happy's apartment, which at that point in the film I was so confused, but I was so happy because I realized, oh man, we're gonna actually have these guys as our cast. Like this isn't not like, oh, okay, we beat them, we beat them, we beat them. Now we'll figure out how to like save them, but like from a distance. It's like no, we're all working on it together. Like they're working on it with Peter. It's not like Strange is a part of this. Strange is out of the picture, which I was so happy about. Like I said, it's a Spider-Man movie. It made me so excited that like it's with Stark Tech. You know, it's like Peter is still a teenager. He shouldn't be able to figure out how to do this, you know, through his own knowledge. You know, I mean, he's trying to get into college, which was another thing that was interesting. And I'm glad that they made it, you know, pretty clear. Like, listen, you're Spider-Man. You're not gonna get into college, all right? Especially with all this stuff. Like, when everyone knows you are, it's not gonna happen. It was a little unfortunate, but it makes sense. But yeah, so I like that Stark was there, but you didn't have it as like, oh, who's this guy? Who's Stark? Like, what is this? It's like, oh, it's Tony Stark. He's a father figure, yada yada yada. You know, it's like, no, he has the tech. I also like the fact that I felt a little dirty that the arc reactor was used by Electro, who in this movie is so amazing. Electro and Green Goblin were my favorite, but oh, Electro was I don't know, man. It was between for different reasons. Electro was my favorite villain in this movie in personality, but Willem Dafoe Green Goblin without the mask was my favorite villain in the MCU almost, period. I'm not gonna go to the scene yet because I'm just talking about literally when they got into the apartment. But I totally forgot to mention, I like that the fact that when Sandman showed up, he saved Peter first, and it makes sense because this movie tests you. It's like, hey, do you remember where we left off with these characters? It's like, uh, immediately Sandman saves him. And it's like, this makes sense because him and Peter figured things out a little bit and then the whole thing happened. And Electro is going through like a shock, like he is supercharged. And you're like, wait a second. Oh, that makes sense. And obviously, if you didn't figure it out, they talked about it and they're like, oh yeah, like I was getting supercharged, I was getting juiced. Oh shit, I was gonna die. Like that's what Electro figures out, and it was funny. It was funny as hell. I love Electro so much, and I love the way he was talking because it was so. It was like Green Goblin was basically doing that in his head, but he was Willem Dafoe was never saying it. Norman Osborn was never actually saying it out loud, but like Jamie Foxx like was amazing the way he was like looking at all the lights. He was like, I like it here. I like it here. I'm like, this guy needs to go. This guy needs to, especially the damage he was doing. Like this guy was wrecking everyone. If it wasn't for Sandman, Peter would have never gotten Electro. So yeah, I was super happy with Electro. I also love the scenes with Electro. One scene in particular was really funny to me, and I'm skipping parts. You know what? I'll get there when we get there. Anyways, point is, we're at the apartment. Okay, we're at the apartment, and now I'm thinking to myself, whoa. And I don't want it to just be a recap, but every part of this movie made me think things, and I just want to get it all out. I was thinking to myself, like, oh my God, okay, Doc Ock is saved, and now Doc Ock was the easy one to figure out, kind of. He's a genius, so you can help that out. Green Goblin's a little more of like, I don't know. And Norman kind of seemed like a nice guy. Technically, Norman was helping him anyways. And I did like the thing of what Norman said of like, and there was Norman, it was Green Goblin at that time. We find out later it was Green Goblin. I'm pretty sure everyone knew it was Green Goblin at that point, but it was a good act. It was a good act. Anyways, so they helped Doc Ock, and I loved seeing Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin working with Spider-Man to help villains, saving them. Like, it sounds dirty out of my mouth. I was just so enamored. That's a big word, but I was so enamored by it. I was like, this is beautiful. Like, all you need is Venom in the background, like with popcorn, be like, you go, guys, you got this. You know what I mean? Like, it was so ridiculous to me. I was like, this is actually happening. Obviously, it was going to go south because the movie wasn't even halfway done. So I was like, okay, I know where this is going to go, but I'm interested. And of course, the way you save Electro, the guy that I was just talking about, how he has a fuse and he's a little on a hinge. Oh yeah, we'll save you, but it's a timer. Literally, when Peter was explaining it to him, I was like, you made it an alarm clock. You made an actual alarm clock. I was like, well, I mean, I don't want to be that guy. I mean, it's not cliche. It is cliche, but I was like, well, I wonder when they're gonna turn then. It's like literally one dot away from like you're cured. He was like, I also love Peter the Spider Sense. Peter Tingle. I love it, dude. The way it was used in this movie was incredible. I also love, I've totally forgot to mention in the fight with Doctor Strange. That's why when he like pushed his soul out, it's an instinct. It's not based on like consciousness. Like it's his spider instinct. So it's like embedded in his genes, right? Like his mutated genes. So he's able to like pivot away from like Strange's like grabs, and he's like, you shouldn't be able to do this. How that Immediately I was like, okay, yeah, it's the spider sense, which is funny because I was thinking like, you know what, this actually makes sense. Yeah, and that's actually part of the reason why Peter was able to beat Doctor Strange. But again, I like the way it was done. It made sense. I'll move on. I just forgot to mention that part. But I love the way the Spider Sense was used because the tension. Oh my God. Because I knew it was happening. Everyone knew it was happening. Once Peter started panicking, it's like, okay, who is it? Is it Goblin? Is it because of Electro? Or is it because of Lizard because he's moving in the box, like in the truck? Or is it because of, Jameson coming in at the front with his like reporters or whatever. I was like, it's not because of Jameson, but they want us to kind of think it is. But they know we're thinking it's the villains, but they're confusing. Like it's like which villain, right? Like we know, like okay, Electro's making it pretty clear. He's like, listen, man, I'm not too sure. I like you, you know. Look at all that juice, like all that power out there, you know. Like when him and Sandman were talking, I love the interactions with Sandman. I found it a little interesting how we always got him as Sand, not as the man very often until the end, but it's whatever. I mean, I was like, okay, sure, why not? Um, but when it happened, I was like, okay, it's gonna start. And sure enough, Peter made it obvious because he's trying to figure out there's so many villains, but he's like, it's not the fact they're bad guys. It's the fact that the intent, right? He was feeling danger. Not like, oh, they're all bad people now. Like, I'm having a change of heart. It's like, no, no, no. It's instinct. He's like, no, I'm not having a change of heart. I'm getting alerted that this is like objectively someone is evil here. You know, not like, oh, it's a gray zone. It's like, no, someone is about to do something evil, and I'm sensing it. Like I'm getting an actual like biological warning. And then it pivots, like the web goes straight. It's in the direction of Electro, but it goes straight to Norman, and that's where he does the shift. And my God, from there, I have not seen a more horrifying. I will make it very clear. We saw Mysterio show like a dead Tony Stark like corpse. I don't care. I have not seen a more terrifying, horrifying scene, like just absolutely scary out of my like mind, dude. Like I'm talking like I was frightened. Like I was legitimately frightened from Willem Dafoe's performance from there until the end of that whole fight that happened. It is the scariest scene I have seen in all of the MCU. Period. Period. I have not. And it happens in Spider-Man all the time. This guy gets beaten to a pulp. Spider-Man gets bashed, torn, destroyed, wrecked by his villains, and he feels more human. Like he has superpowers, but he gets destroyed, especially when it's Green Goblin. And it's funny to me because I was even thinking to myself, I was like, you know, Goblin's powerful, but I feel like Electro showed he's no. Immediately when he started fighting him, and granted, the villains didn't help him really. All of them were kind of doing their own thing. They just booked it. They were like, okay, you know what? Forget this. Goblin was like, "No, I'm gonna stay." And granted, Lizard got some licks in. He got some punches and scraps when Peter was trying to get out, because you could see Peter was getting beaten, like he was already bleeding, and then Lizard was there on the window, like on the side of the like building, and he's scratching and bashing at Peter, and then he smashes Peter right back after Goblin has just beaten him to a pulp. He like Lizard sends Spidey right back to Goblin. No warning, no warning. The transition didn't have like a scene in between. No, it transitioned straight into yeah. Now Goblin's gonna beat on him again. I'm like, whoa, wait, this kid's gonna die. You know what I mean? Like I was thinking to myself, he's gonna die. Like he will die because the way he was getting manhandled was I never seen like. You guys got to keep in mind we've been watching either Thor, who is facing against people that are like interdimensional, but he's a god, right? So I mean, he's an alien, but he's a god, right? And you have like Tony and whatever, but they're adults. This is different. The way he was getting demolished, he kept smashing him through over and over, and the face, the flickering of the lights, the lighting, the face transformation. I don't know how much like makeup was used here, but he looked like a goblin, but as a human. Scared the hell out of me. I was Once we got to the point where Aunt May was starting to get involved, I was very scared. And rightfully so. So we all know what happens. The glider was right behind her, and I was like, please don't kill her. At least not like this. Because I in my head I was like, if you do it like some twisted poetic, like oh the way Goblin died, he killed Aunt May like that. No, but unfortunately, Aunt May does die, and that is one of the parts that I mentioned where I may or may not have cried. Mostly because I knew what was going to happen and seeing it happen, and even though they didn't tell us, they stalled it for a while. It's mostly, I think, because we needed a break from literally the absolute demolishment that Peter like faced against like Goblin literally a minute ago. Like they needed to give us a break and then be like, oh, and Aunt May's dying. Great, thanks for that. Anyways, so that happens. Then we finally get to the actual part where this is a very, very spoiler territory. The Spider-Men show up, which was so funny because when Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, showed up, it was so funny when they saw him in the portal because I thought it was gonna be like, oh, it's Peter, but he wasn't walking for a while. So I was thinking like, what if it's Lizard and they're confused? Like you could see it's Spider-Man, but I was like, what if they just flip it on us and for some reason like Lizard comes out of nowhere, he's like rah, which is funny because Lizard does actually do that later in the film, but not like that. So it ended up being Andrew, which I completely forgot to like look out for. And it was so funny, dude. I don't know why. Andrew and Zendaya had so much like banter chemistry. Right when he shows up, MJ and Peter, obviously Amazing Spider-Man Peter, are going back and forth. And it's that back and forth. I can't like remember the whole thing, but it was the funniest thing. It's like oh yeah, well, go crawl on the wall or something. It's like, why would I do that? Like, what, why? He puts his hand on. It's like, is this good? He's like, so crawl. It's like, and then the grandma's like, could you get the web out? It's so funny. And then obviously Tobey Maguire shows up. His one's a little tamed, but he felt like the sensei. Like he felt like the Jedi to like the other two Spider-Man as like you're the Padawans. Although to be fair, I'll be honest, Andrew was definitely like I think my favorite in terms of how he's like interacting with the characters. I think personality-wise, Andrew's Spider-Man was always the funnest. Personally, that's subjective, right? It's subjective. To me, I always like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man's personality the most. I think personality wise, he has the best one. Um, so from there, I did like that when Toby showed up. I'm gonna say them by the actors' names just because there's three Peter Parkers, which they do that multiple times. They're like, it's like Peter. It's like, what? Wait, me? It's like, wait, no, Parker. It's like, dude, that's still me. And I love when they're talking over each other because we can hear what each one's saying, like pretty well. So the mics are great, but it's just the fact that you can hear what each one's saying, but like also they're all saying it at the same time. So it's funny. So I think I ended up focusing on Andrew's voice the most, but basically at one point he's like, dude, it's the same like when he's like Parker, it's like, dude, we all have the same world Parker. I was like, yeah, that's true. But I loved that when Toby showed up, he was like, actually, I was looking for your friend because I've been having a feeling he needs me. I love that scene so much, and it teared me up because I was like, this guy is actually going through a lot. He's going through a lot right now. They had that scene where he's looking up at Jonah and like he's just saying everyone that Spider-Man gets involved with is hurt and destroyed and damaged, and you can see like the Spider-Man guilt that we never got with Tom Holland's Spider-Man until that point. And like I said, this movie transforms Tom Holland's Spider-Man from like this isn't like oh welcome home to the Marvel universe again anymore. This is like now you need to grow up and become Spider-Man. Like you are Spider-Man now you are Spider-Man. You no Tony Stark, none of this other, whatever from the MCU. Like you are in the MCU, congrats. Now we're gonna transform you into Spider-Man. And when they showed up, it was so cool. The way they showed up too was awesome. It was so awesome because they're both on like the building and they're both in their poses and they're like silhouettes, right? But they're not actually in their costumes because Toby was in his costume for a while, and then Andrew was always in his costume, so it was a little back and forth. Different dynamics, right? But I love this immediate thing of like Peter went from don't even try to pretend like you understand where I'm coming from. You know what I mean? When he said like, "Listen, man, I get it," and then he interrupts Andrew and is like, "No." No, I don't want to hear it. And then they talk about Uncle Ben eventually. And then even though they didn't say it, but it's not one of those things you need to say. The scene was beautiful because it was able to tell you, right? It was able to tell you, like, hey, Peter kind of figured out, oh, wait, you guys do know where I'm coming from. Not just because you're Peter Parkers, but because Uncle Ben, which is funny, we never got the origin. We know what the origin is. And that's one of those things where Uncle Ben's never actually mentioned very often in the MCU Spider-Man verse, but in this movie, that is the last thing Aunt May says. With great power comes great responsibility. And like I said before, Peter realized these villains are his responsibility. And he was trying to save them. And then the actual Spider-Man that were involved showed up and then it became a challenge of like, okay, Aunt May's dead. May's dead because of me, because I wanted to help these guys. And now you guys are here. And let me guess, these were your villains. It's like, yeah, it was our villains, actually. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So now it's your problem, not my problem. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go kill that guy that killed my aunt. And you guys clean up your own mess. I don't care anymore. I'm done. And then they get them with the Uncle Ben thing, and he's like, okay. And he doesn't say it, but you get it, and it's great. It's awesome. It's such good writing, and it's like it's amazing. It's amazing because I'm thinking to myself like, wow, okay, he gets it, and at the same time, like he also knows, like, you know what? Yeah, it's my responsibility. Whether it was the this version of me or your version of me or whatever. Anyways, then I love the back and forth of like the banter between them. This happens not just when they're making the lab in the lab and stuff, but in like the when they get to the Statue of Liberty, they start doing some more like back and forth. Some of the stuff that I loved was all kind of directed around Andrew a little bit. Okay, I'll talk about Andrew's ones. I love the MJ one because he didn't have MJ. But I did like when he mentioned Gwen. He was like, she was my MJ. I was really nervous because I was like, please don't say she was your girlfriend because that makes it sound less impactful as like, yeah, your auntie died, your uncle died. I mean, all their uncles died, but Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, let's be honest, he got off a little easy. So they had to say, oh, yeah, his uncle died. It's like, all our uncles died, but yeah, sure. And then he was like, yeah, Gwen. And I was like, don't say your girlfriend. It's like she was my MJ. I was like, okay, that's good. There we go. That sounds better because it just doesn't sound right. Even though Gwen is very, very important to him, it would have sounded a little weird. So I was happy the wording was really good there. Anyways, speaking of MJ and Gwen, it was really interesting because they were talking about their girlfriends and stuff, and like, Toby and Andrew were talking, and he was like, yeah, I mean, like, we don't have the best of luck, I think, but it works out. He's like, yeah, yeah. And then Toby name drops that he has his own MJ. And I immediately thought to myself, I was like, yeah, Andrew, where's your MJ? And I'm not trying to say, well, oh, there's going to be an Amazing Spider-Man 3. I don't think there will be. There won't be. But I do think maybe in some other Spider-Verse, we may get some things where maybe Andrew's character there's some hints that, hey, he went back and he did some things differently, which is interesting because both of these Spider-Man are at the end of their trilogy, or one of them had a trilogy, the other didn't. That's a little awkward, but you know what I mean. The end of their last movie. So the periods are a little weird in terms of the villains compared to the hero, and then it's like okay, but it's not the most confusing. It's just you got to actually have seen the films and understand. It makes sense though. Um, and then the other thing I loved is Andrew when Toby was saying, "You're amazing, man. You're amazing. You're just amazing. You're amazing." And I was like, "Yep, amazing, amazing Spider-Man." The first time he said amazing, I was like, "He's the amazing Spider-Man." And then they kept doing it. I was like, "Okay." That's why I found it so funny. I was like, "Amazing, huh? Amazing, amazing, amazing." And I think since we're yeah, and then my favorite part with the Toby thing when it comes to the back and forth with the Spider-Man was that part when they were like, "Wait, you make your own webs? Out they come out of you?" He's like, "Do they come out of anywhere else?" It's because biologically with spiders, you're thinking like, "Well, they don't really come out from the wrist, so." They do is just I was it was so funny to me because I was like, yeah, that is Spider-Man for a small period of time made organic webs, not just in that movie, but in the comics too, and then they got rid of that idea. So it's really funny how both the other two are like, no, I create like I have to. It's a messy process. He's like, it does sound pretty messy. It's like what? And it's like, do you ever web block? And web block was such a funny, but also kind of weird when you think about a topic that they brought up. And I didn't know. I don't know about the term was interesting, but it was really funny. And I also love that when all of them had their spider sense, they could sense things. It's like, oh, something's up, you know. But I think between the Spider-Man, that's fine. The actual Tom Holland parts, I think my favorite one is when they're actually fighting the villains, which we'll jump into anyways. Um, when they're fighting the villains, I love Tom's like, we need to work as a team. I did not even remember the Avengers. I did not even think about it. He was like, Toby was like, I've always worked on my own. Andrew's like, I've always worked on my own too. And I was like, yeah, you all worked on your own. And then Tom was like, wait, you guys haven't, wait, I've worked on a team. I was like, and immediately the Avengers music was playing in the background, like, dun dun da da. I was like, he's right. He has worked on a, you know how to do this. I was like, okay, you know what? Yeah, I like that. I like that. He's like, I worked on a team before. It's like, okay, cool. It's like, I've been on the Avengers. It's like, oh, the Avengers. What's the Avengers? You know, it's like what we like they're Earth's mightiest. It's like, listen, buddy, just what's the plan? It's like, okay, cool, and that's where you know uh, Tom Holland, Tom does his thing, Peter does his thing, and he does like, okay, you go right, you go left, and he coordinates with these guys, which it's not even just because he's our Spider-Man now, it's because, yeah, they nailed it on the head, dude. I was so surprised when they did that. I was so, like, it made sense. It made sense, and I was so happy when I realized that. I was like, oh my God, he's right. Yeah, Avengers. Anyways, that was super fun. And then the actual banter between the villains, I don't think happened too much. I did like the, Toby fighting Sandman again. It reminded me how dangerous Sandman is, because this guy almost drowned. And then the Electro stuff was so funny. It was so fun. You guys know which scene I'm talking about. When Electro gets defeated, it is the funniest thing. It was so, oh God, it was so funny. Jamie thought like how he was having the time of his life, dude. And I don't remember him being this charismatic in his movie. I think that's because of the writing. Like I'm sure the personality made sense if I remember correctly, but oh my God, when he was like, I mean, listen, man, you look good. Don't get me wrong. And I was like, oh, that's a nice compliment. And then he just went on. And he was like, it's just because, you're from Queens and you're always in a suit and you're helping the poor and stuff. I was like, where are you going with this? And he was like, I just assumed you'd be black. And I was like, and you can see like the visible awkwardness that Andrew like shows on Peter's face of like, sorry, man. It's like, I don't know, the shrug, it's like, I don't know what to say about that, And he's like, I love it so much because he then says, it's just I feel like there's got to be a black Spider-Man. And I love it's not even just like a oh huh hint hint, remember? It's like of course, I did the point. I was like there's a black Spider-Man, yeah. It's like and he's pretty sick. I have a theory we'll see our version of him in the MCU 100%, but I think that's way down the line. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, I like the way it was set up because it actually made sense the way he was talking about it. He was like, I mean, you're from Queens. You're always in the suit. I don't know. The suit thing I didn't get. I was like, I thought he meant a literal suit. I was like, oh, you meant the costume. I was like, okay, sure. And he was like helping the poor and stuff. And I was like, okay, cool. He was like, I just assumed you'd be black. And I was like, okay. And then I like how from that logic he got to There should be a black Spider-Man there somewhere. You know, it's like, I mean, the stuff is right there. Like it's on a platter. You're from New York, dude. Like you're helping the poor and you're from New York. You know, you fight off like criminals, like the bad stuff, but like I mean, you're not, the feds don't like you, right? It's like it kind of makes sense. And it's just, I mean, he didn't say that part, but you know, I kind of see where he was coming from. I was like, yeah, sure. Also, it made me think, Miles isn't from Queens, is he? So I don't know if that worked. That's why I immediately thought about it. I was like, wait, actually, is Miles even from Queens? Because I know they, are close, but I don't know if they live in the same part of New York. Anyways, after that, Doc Ock helped with Electro, which I think definitely was needed because Electro, like I said, bro, this guy was juiced. I don't know what. I love the way they explained, like, because it's a different dimension, it's a different color, not different color. I mean, they didn't have to say that. They didn't have to come up with an excuse, but it was a different dimension. He said the electricity felt different. And I loved it. That was way in the beginning, but I love the fact that that's why he looks different. And I'm happy the arc reactor got out and everything. It's interesting how Stark, there's semblances there. It's like it's because of Stark's nanotech that Doc was constrained, and it was because of the arc reactor that you had this version of Electro. It's like Stark is still around in his tech, but we've moved on from Iron Man. Now we're still just doing Spider-Man stuff. So it was a very interesting touches here and there. And Norman comes back, and we get that whole thing. Also, yeah, Lizard had that whole chase around and stuff, which made me very nervous because I was like, can you guys just like, because when I saw Ned and MJ, I was like, guys, just leave the room. Why, like, who cares about the portal? Just walk out of the room. Like, I don't care. Like, please, for the love of God. I know what's gonna happen because we saw in the trailer, like, they're gonna be there. But I was like, please, just leave the room, guys. You know what you have to do. Like, fine, okay, you leave the portal open, but go, go. You know, Lizard didn't even notice until the noise was coming. You know what I mean? So it's not even like, oh, it's a safety hazard. You gotta close it. It's like, guys, please. Anyways, yeah. Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin. Green Goblin comes back, and this time he's all tethered and stuff because of the fight they had. We could see at the ending like he looked very much like Green Goblin, except I love the fact we didn't have his mask the entire time. It was just Willem Dafoe and like probably some, practical effects a little bit. Yeah, it probably had some like, okay, let's stretch you out here and let's give you wrinkles here and like Spider-Man. It's like, so the stuff there, I was like, okay, and it got like in the angles, it's like let's shoot it right, let's light it right. Yeah, there you go. You're Green Goblin. There we go. So I love it theatrically too. It's theatrically. But yeah. So he comes back, and yeah, Peter's in a different mood. But I love the fact that even when Doctor Strange comes back, and he's like, "Oh, good job, kid," and everything. I am so impressed with how devastating Green Goblin is, because we saw it against Peter, but like, my God, even against Doctor Strange, I was like, "You need to be careful." He jumped on him like a madman. That's what I'm saying. He's crazy. Like it's not even just like because in the first movie, yeah, he's a little crazy, but my God, he's crazy. He's insane. So yeah, the box blows up. It's all because of Green Goblin, and it's insane. And then you get the fight between Peter and Green Goblin, and it's intense. It's intense, and I loved every inch of it, every minute, and like inch of like punches, the the position of being on Cap's shield was very poetic when you think about it, because Cap is one that believes in like, you got to be a heroic symbol, right? Like Tony isn't that kind of guy. Tony was the tech part. Cap is who like, morally speaking, Peter gets a lot of like the same traits from. You know what I mean? So it was I like that. I didn't and oh my God. I don't know if you guys remember this, but when he was punching, when he punched the shield, and you heard that like the ding, like and you saw like the dent. It was like, oh yeah, he was like, I'm gonna kill you. It's like okay, and then he did that. I was like, oh, you're gonna kill him. So yeah, and then obviously Toby jumping in and catching it and like stopping it. I did think it was kind of nice because I wanted a moment between the first Spider-Man and our Spider-Man. You know what I mean? And I like that it's his Green Goblin, but it's so, isn't it crazy how like his Green Goblin is more of a menace and more of a Green Goblin to Tom Holland's Spider-Man than he is to Tobey Maguire's. And that was the most interesting thing. And it's also why, and we're basically at the end now where I can explain this. It's also why I was so confused that they all left. They all went back to the universe. And I guess it makes sense, but it was kind of making me think, well, and I realized it when Norman showed up right at the beginning of the film. I was like, Peter doesn't know who Norman Osborn is. I was like, that's odd because we saw the Oscorp building in the last movie. So I was like, either Oscorp has just been created or they scrapped the idea because now I'm confused. How do you not know who Norman Osborn is? So that was like, I guess maybe something's going to happen when the universe is going to change a little bit and we're going to get Norman Osborn. Uh, well, we don't keep Norman Osborn, so something needs to happen. So I think Norman is just starting his business and enterprise. So we're going to get into that, which is also where I'm going to, we'll say that for the ending when the actual thing happens. But yeah, so the fight happens. I'm really happy they did the catch. I'm also happy that Norman stabbed like Toby Spider-Man. Didn't kill him. I was gonna be so pissed if they killed him. I was like, no, no way in hell. I was like, that guy has been through a lot. There's no way that's gonna kill him. And I was happy too when he said it. He was like, yeah, I've been stabbed before. It's okay. Um, so I was happy about that because it's a very Green Goblin thing. I was like, yep, that makes sense. And also, yeah, that makes sense that Spider-Man's not gonna die from that. And obviously stop him. And they made it look like he killed him, but you know, they got me for 2 seconds. To be fair, I'll be honest. I was like, oh, they just killed him, I guess. And it's like, oh, right, I forgot. Yeah, they cure him. So that, and then we get to the conclusion. And before that, it's also really funny because when Peter has to give a send off to the other two Spider-Man, it's so funny. They play like the adult roles. Like that's why I loved. Toby was like the oldest brother, right? And I love the brotherly love between all the Spider-Man. I was like, dude, please hug them when you leave. Like, don't just go like, see you around, man. Like, don't do that, please. I was like, hug, 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 and he did it right at the end. I was like, thank you, because it felt like that, right? When they were talking to each other, I was like, these guys. These guys are brothers. And they even said it. He was like, I never had brothers before. You know, it's like, yeah, I was I was so happy because these guys needed it. Oh, I totally forgot to mention really important thing because we're talking about like I think it was Andrew's Spider-Man that said this like oh I never had brothers before. Another wholesome thing that happened, very important. MJ when Peter didn't catch him, but it was Andrew Peter that caught him. Spider-Man 2, yeah, Spider-Man number 2 caught him. I was crying. I teared up. That was the second time I teared up. First time was because of I said what the first time was, but I forgot about it. The second time was because of that, because I was like, you need that, you needed that. It was funny too, because she was like, thank you, and it's like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, yeah, okay, I'm okay. Yeah, it's like, bro, my heart, I was like, dude, you needed that so much, man. I was like, she saved you somehow. And I was like, that was beautiful. So that was that. I'm so happy I didn't forget to say that. I would have hated myself if I did this video and was editing. I was like, oh my God, I forgot to mention that. That scene was amazing. Anyways, now back to where I was. Very end, he's doing the send off. I'm happy because Andrew, even though he's like the second brother, he's like kind of the pal with Toby of like we're kind of like a little older, so we can like be honest with each other. He was like, "You're hurting a lot right now, aren't you?" He's like, oh yeah," because like they're both smiling and be like, "Mm-hmm, see you, man. You got this." And it's like, "All right, thanks, guys." And then right after he swings, he's like, "You're in a lot of pain right now, aren't you?" And it's like, "Yeah, yeah." Like he's like, "I've been stabbed before," and it's like. Andrew's like, yeah, I know what that feels like. You're still not feeling very good. Anyways, I love that. And then they all leave. I also love the fact that when the cracks were happening, you were seeing like outlines. Like I saw Rhino, I saw Scorpion, I saw a lot of different villains, and obviously they weren't going to show them. That wouldn't make sense. But yeah, so everyone forgets who Peter Parker is, and we're at an hour now, so I'm just gonna zoom through this. I don't know what's gonna happen because I like it because now Peter is Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Because now it's like, oh, MJ is still a situation. I love the way he realized he was like, oh, the bandage. He remembers. He's like, maybe I'll think about it a little longer before I tell her everything and before I get involved with MJ's life again. She did say, she's like, you better tell me. And it's like, yeah, I will. And then he went back on his word a little bit, but technically speaking, that MJ is never going to kill him because, well, that MJ is the MJ now, and that MJ is never going to actually remember that conversation or is going to have that intense feeling. You know what I mean? I'm sure she'll be frustrated at some point, like for justification's sake, to help the audience feel better. Like she'll probably like slap him or something and be like, "I can't believe you did that to me." It's like, yeah, but she won't actually feel like the rage that she would have felt from that version of her, realizing that he didn't just say it right away. You know what I mean? So, yeah. I was so nervous when Ned walked in, by the way. I thought Ned was going to walk in and it was going to be like Ned and her are together. I was like, well, then this is stupid. But I was like, that's too dramatic and like teen drama. You know what I mean? I was like, don't do that. They didn't. I was like, good, 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 good. Okay, cool. I almost got a heart attack there. Anyways, and then it kind of confused me with the Aunt May stuff because May Parker's grave says May Parker. No one knows who Peter Parker is. So who is Peter going as? Peter Johnson? like that's why I'm confused. Like who are you? You know, like are you like you're Peter Parker, right? So that's why I'm confused. She Happy was like, how'd you get in touch with her? It's like Spider-Man. It's like, yeah, me too. He was like he was a little confused and I was a little confused. I was like, so what's the story here? You know, so I'm assuming everything that actually happened with Spider-Man happened, but everything that involved Peter is out of the question, which is interesting how originally he wanted everyone to forget that he was Spider-Man. Now everyone forgets that he's Peter Parker. So it's like it's a flip of the coin, which Strange he was like, I do not want to do that because then all your friends and family, you'll be alone, kid. Alone. And he's like, I know, but I don't have any choice. And it's the hardest thing, dude. I love that as an adult, Doctor Strange, especially as someone that like he really has no hate towards anything Peter's done. Like even if he actually almost did destroy the universe, he cares about the kid. Like he doesn't want to put him through that. He's like, no, 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 wait, whoa, that's a serious thing I'm gonna do to you. I can't just do that. It's like I'm ready for it. It's like I don't think you are, but okay. You know, so it's intense. It's really intense. And we see that. I'm like, God damn, this dude's paying rent now. So now he's gotta go to the Daily Bugle. He's going to go to the Daily Bugle. So that's gonna be whatever trilogy that is, which now we can talk about that because the one last thing I want to say is if the lighting will fix, there we go. Oh my God, I love the suit. That is the last thing I wanted to say. It was the last thing I wanted to say in the non-spoiler review, but I just didn't know if I should say it. The last scene is Spider-Man, Spider-Man. Did you see the way the suit, the blue, glistened? I'll tell you what, I love the black. The black and red suit. I was like, this is probably my favorite Spider-Man suit because I think black works better. Because it's also technically how the first suit was black and red, but they changed it. Um, for whatever reason, comic color print, something. It's like the same reason Hulk went from gray to green. It's cheaper, but I don't know if that's the reason for black to. I don't think it is, but they turned it into blue eventually. It turned into like dark tint navy, and then it was like, oh yeah, now it's just blue. But my God, the way the blue glistened, the way the blue glistened, he is Spider-Man. You know, I always thought to myself that Andrew had the best Spider-Man personality. I don't know if he had the best costume. I know a lot of people said he had the best costume and like the choreography as him as Spider-Man was the most accurate from what the comics would be. And I kind of agreed because I feel like Tobey Maguire's is a little stiff. That kind of has to do with the suit too. Um, And Tom Holland wasn't there yet. That's why I'm saying the way he was in that costume and like, oh, he's going from the window and everything, and he's got to pay rent, he's got to worry about that stuff, and he's on the comms, he's like, like figuring out where the cops are, like finding crime and stuff, and he's swinging through Times Square within the snow of New York. It's just like in those comic panels. I'll probably put something right here, like a reference. I have this like really light. Really? You want to do this to me while I have like 5 minutes left to finish? I'm gonna put a panel here of like the one I had in my head of like this is like this panel. Like when I saw that scene, except even better because it's live. Oh, okay, I'm gonna take it out now. But anyways, point is, it was beautiful. That whole scene there. I wish he had done like when they did in Amazing Spider-Man, but I feel like that's because it'd be too much like Amazing Spider-Man where he does this. You know what I mean? Like he does this to this like in midair, but they just had him like jump in. I was waiting for it because he was swinging around so long. I was like, for so long that I was like, well, you gotta do a pose, right? It's like no, he just jumped right into the screen. But at that point, I was like, that's Spider-Man. Like he grew up now. You're not just like, oh, welcome to the MCU now. And then I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense why home is the entire trilogy. In my theory, that's why the whole trilogy had home as a theme, is because it's a welcome home for Spider-Man. But you're not Spider-Man, Spider-Man yet. And it's not until the very end that it's like, you're Spider-Man. Like, this is the most accurate. I feel like now what we're going to get is the most accurate Spider-Man we are going to get, period, when we see him again. Which is another thing that I don't think I'm ready to talk about, but is the only thing I have to discuss now. And it's going to make me a little emotional because I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know when we're going to see Spider-Man again. And I don't know, from what I gathered, there may be rumors that we'll get another trilogy. Guys, we're gonna get Spider-Man in college. We're gonna get Spider-Man in that costume. We're gonna get Spider-Man with John Jonah Jameson doing his thing. We're gonna get the oh, you know what this means, right, too? Like, I know MJ is the most important thing, and this Spider-Man does not like he's not gonna forget that. But you do realize this means we could meet Harry and Gwen and the others. You know what I mean, right? Like Flash is there, but you do know, like, like we can Eddie, we can meet. Which actually I forgot to talk about. The symbiote is there now, which didn't really make sense to me. I said it out loud, and someone in the audience was like, "No, it makes sense." And I was like, I'm not gonna argue with you, but in my head I was like, it doesn't make sense because how did the symbiote go with Eddie, but that one part of the symbiote, you know what I mean? Like it just didn't transport back. Like you're still part of the other universe, but no, it's there. And now somehow Eddie, our version of Eddie Brock, whoever that's gonna be, is gonna get hit with that. Which now I think confirms they're probably not gonna do that crossover in the Venom thing. Or maybe they will, or maybe they won't. I don't know what they're gonna do, to be honest. I still think it's up in the air a little bit. I like Tom Hardy's Venom. It's okay. I've never seen the films, but to be honest with you, I kind of want something that's more natural than I feel like, oh, we'll shove him in. It's like, no, I want you to make a character that I feel like is made for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. You know what I mean? Or the environment of Spider-Man you have. So, yeah. Anyways, I'm excited because if we do get another trilogy, it's going to be the most Spider-Man trilogy we have seen, period. So I think Oscorp will still matter. I think we'll get Harry and the development of how Oscorp originates, and Peter. That's why I feel like it has to be a little weird, right? Because Peter has heard Gwen's name. He still loves Mary Jane, but never tells her. Well, not Mary Jane, MJ, right? And he knows about Osborn and really knows about Osborn, as in like Norman Osborn. He wants to destroy. He wanted to kill Norman Osborn. So imagine he meets a guy named Harry Osborn. He'd be like, Osborn, what? You know what I mean? And then it's like maybe I got him wrong or something. This is just my version, but he's just my best friend or something, or like a good buddy of mine. And he's like, hey, Peter, meet my dad, Norman. It's like, okay, and I would start panicking. But there we go. So I think that's kind of it. Man, 1 hour and 10 minutes, huh? So it took me an hour to talk about the spoiler review part. That makes sense. I mean, yeah, I didn't want to make it that long, but I didn't just want to recap, but I wanted to get all my thoughts out. Like I said, this is my top three, and might be, I don't know, it might get there to just be my favorite. It depends on how I see Spider-Man next time. You know what I mean? Like when I see him next, if he feels like he is Spider-Man, Spider-Man, because we didn't see him talk in that suit. We didn't see him like walk and talk in that suit. We saw him swing in that suit, and he's beautiful, dude. The blue, I don't know why the blue was glistening so nicely. I was like, what the hell? Anyways, before the light does that again, I think I'm just gonna send it off, guys. So, like I said, put it down in the comments. Where does it rank for you, this movie? Um, like I said, top three for me. And were you a Spider-Man fan going into this? Did you get every reference? I know there's a lot of Easter eggs I must have missed. I'm gonna go watch those and be like, how did I miss that? Anyways, um, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you're new to my channel, you'll probably notice there's not a whole lot of Spider-Man stuff here. That's because don't rarely talk about comic stuff, but it's something I'll work on. It's just I'm trying to build the channel slowly, and it might take a little bit. So feel free to subscribe, though, if you're interested to see more videos. So like, subscribe, hit the bell icon is what I normally say. Liking the video shows me that you like videos like this. So the reason is just so I keep it the reference. If you don't see me upload that type of video for a while, do keep in mind I know you guys enjoyed it, right? And I can see view counts as well, but I think liking helps because there's ways to rewatch things and still be like, well, I don't know if I want to see another one. Liking is direct communication to me. That's like, I kind of want to see another one, dude. It's like, all right, message received. I'll see what I can do. And then obviously hitting the bell icon and subscribing is so you get in your feed and you can support the channel and other videos and everything. And I do some other videos here, skits, reactions to other things. But if you're not interested in that, feel free to wait until I make another Spider-Man video. But yeah, so with that being said, I hope to see you soon. And I hope to see Spider-Man soon as well. I didn't talk about the Doctor Strange part at the very end, mostly because I feel like that's something that's going to get released out in the public, and I think there's going to be trailers for that, so I'm not really going to go deep into that. But yeah, it's the first time I've done a movie review. I hope it was okay. Uh, I'll see you guys next time then. Maybe in the next MCU movie. Who knows? Take care, peace, and goodbye.